Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today's is one I don't necessarily want to address, but because I've gotten so many phone calls, so many texts, I've had a pile of comments on YouTube wanting to know my opinion on this. I felt I would share it with you guys versus having 20 separate conversations. And what I'm talking about specifically has to do with the big walleye cheating scandal that just broke loose, where two competitors, Runyon and Kaminsky, were caught essentially of stuffing their walleyes with lead weights, I think a pair of pliers, walleye fillets. They shoved them down the fish's mouth and added 8 pounds to their total weight. And they cut the walleye open in front of the other anglers at that point and saw what was inside of them. So I believe they've been charged. I don't know exactly with what. But I do know first place in that tournament was $45,000. And with the fish that they weighed in, they easily won the tournament. I think, in fact, they had double the amount of weight of the second place competitor. So they would have walked away with $45,000 plus who knows what other incentives and whatever. I mean, it's a big issue and it's a major concern because, in my opinion, this is happening at all different levels. And it's not specifically just an isolated instance. And as much as I want to take a fillet knife to the guys that did this, I would love to see more action taken by the fishing community. I blame the fishing world, the tournament world, for this. And what I mean by that is there are no repercussions for the actions being taken by the anglers. In this case, this team has failed lie detector tests in the past. Last year, they won a tournament. It was actually two tournaments where there was a total of 300 plus $1,000 that they won. In one of the two events, they were disqualified. So, in most tournaments that we fish out there, one of the rules specifically states if you have felony records, if you have failed lie detector tests, broken rules in the past, that needs to be brought to the tournament attention. Most tournament entry forms have a specific checkbox for that. So the question I have is, why were they even allowed to fish this tournament in the first place? I have known about these guys, and I'm not even in the walleye world because I have lots of friends in the walleye world who have told me about them and the potential things that they were doing. So my question is, why hasn't anything been done? And this is not just a walleye problem. This is at all tournament levels, all tournament species. It's a major black eye on the sport that needs to be corrected, and the tournament organizations have to be held accountable. Now, I'm not saying there need to be legal matters brought against them, but what I'm saying is they need to take better action in policing their sport. And in my opinion, I think most of the time they turn and they don't approach it the way they need to. I think a lot of times they choose to sweep it under the rug. There are rules in place in the tournaments that I fish that state what can and cannot be done. If you do not follow the rules and you break them, you should be disqualified or have to pay whatever fine or issue, whether it's a weight deduction. There's rules in place that need to be followed. If they're not, the tournament organizations need to take action and hold the anglers accountable because until they do that, we will not see anglers fearful of the rules out there. In my opinion, it's almost a challenge to some anglers out there to push the gray limits. They want to get as much of an advantage as possible, and if they walk that fine line of a rule violation or not, generally what happens is they don't they don't get a disqualification or a penalty. It's in the future new rules are put in place. Now that's one thing. In this case, this is clear cheating. But I can give you a lot of other examples that are probably clear cheating. I mean, is this different than an angler who is weighing fish and holding the gill plate shut to scoop water into their bag, which would then increase their weight, not by pounds, but potentially by ounces? Or is that simply gaining an advantage over your competitor because they could have weighed the fish in the same manner? It's a rule violation now that says when weighing your fish in the tournaments that I used to fish, I don't even think it's still a rule in place, but it used to be a rule that said if you were on the final day, the top 10 day, you had to lip your fish and put them into the scale. You could not grab them by the gills. And the reason that that was put in place is because some anglers understood that if they grabbed them by the gills, they could keep the gill plates shut. And when they pulled bass out of their weighing bag that had water, they could retain water inside of the fish's mouth. Is that an advantage or is it a rule violation? It clearly, in my opinion, is not as blatant as stuffing objects down the fish's mouth. But my point is, we need to make sure that the rules are followed. There are anglers out there that are competing that have failed lie detectors in the past. There are anglers that we know have broken rules. So the question I have is, why do we let them back into the events? If we want the events to be the most honest, you know, tournaments we can fish where we respect the individuals who are fishing it, we need to make sure that we don't let people in with a bad background into the tournaments. But we do. I don't understand it. So I hold the tournament organizations every bit as accountable. And I'm not pointing fingers at the walleye tournament that this took place at, because in fact, they did take action. But I think there's a lot of tournaments out there that might try to sweep it under the rug because they don't want that black eye. It's a marketing vehicle. Their sponsors will not be happy if there's cheaters caught in their events. So it's better to be held to deal with it internally versus letting the world know about it. But that's not doing anything to dissuade anglers from cheating. Like, that's the biggest issue I have. You tell me that if these guys were not so dumb as to add 8 pounds to 5 fish, like when you think about that with walleye, that means your average weight would have gone from what, 24 pounds for 5 fish, a little under 5 pounds of fish, up to, I think they weighed almost 34 pounds. So almost a 7 pound average. You're talking about the difference in your 5 fish being like 4 inches longer. It doesn't take a genius to look at those fish and say, that's not 34 pounds of fish. Not to mention, when you look at pictures, their belly looks like there's something stuffed in the fish that's weighing down their bellies. So in this case, these anglers were stupid enough to try that. But are you also telling me that there aren't anglers out there that are adding a few ounces to their fish? We'd never know the difference there unless maybe we used a metal detector or a magnet or something to try to see what's in those fish. But until stuff like that's done, it's probably happening. As much as I'd love to say it's not. I mean, that's one thing I love about the BPT format, where you've got an official in your boat that has a whistle ready to tell you that you're cheating, or breaking a rule, whether it's intentional or not. You need to be held accountable for those rules that you make. It's just one of those things that until the tournament organizations make very clear examples of anglers that are breaking the rules, we're not doing anything to help ourselves in the sport. I'm sorry, but that's the way that I view it. And I know all the other anglers out there that I've talked with have said the same thing. This is not surprising. We need to take much better effort to prevent this. In this case, these anglers have a black history. We could have simply not allowed them in that tournament. And I'm sure that this is happening at all different levels. So that's my opinion, guys. In this case, they should be fried. They should go to jail. They should do whatever. They've won hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I don't know if they're going to have to pay that money back. I can assure you that the people that finish second place will not be getting that money. The people that fish fifth place will not be bumped to fourth place. So it affects a lot of anglers and a lot of people choosing to fish tournaments that are relying on that money potentially to make a living. In this case, it's not like these guys needed the money to put food on their table. If they did, they'd probably be at the grocery store stealing something out of the grocery store instead of trying to sabotage a tournament. I put this right up there with the same thing as walking into a jewelry store and trying to steal whatever you want from the jewelry store, whether it's at gunpoint or you're trying to slide it into your pocket. It's straight theft. In this case, that's exactly what they did. So they should be held very much accountable and never be able to fish another tournament. And in order for that to happen, it's going to come down to the anglers. We know who these guys are. We can't allow these guys to be there. We need to self-police, and we need to make sure that if we want to take this sport to the next level, this shit's not sorry for the language. This is not going on. I mean, it's frustrating. I take it personal as somebody that is in this sport as a full-time career. It does not help me at all when this stuff comes out. So it's up to myself, it's up to you guys watching to help police the sport and make sure that when this happens, it is brought to light and not swept under the rugs. I think that's the most important thing. And that's what my 2 cents are on this. I'm not gonna comment anymore. I don't know these anglers. I don't know all the details about it. I just know that this is an issue for the sport that needs to be corrected. I mean, it's very clear that in other professional sports, when people have been caught cheating, there are very clear repercussions for that. And in this case, we don't have that. Depending on who the angler is, maybe nothing happens. Maybe they're kicked out for life. It may be the same violation, and it just comes down to whatever the tournament organization wants to do. So that's what I've got for you guys. Really frustrating. It breaks my heart to see this stuff happen. And it just is a step back for the sport and the industry as a whole. So hopefully we can prevent it and move forward, and we don't have to worry about these guys again in the future.